Good morning. We're going to begin our oversight hearing. I want to welcome all of you to the first hearing of the subcommittee on oversight and performance evaluation. The goal of this subcommittee is to provide legislative oversight of the state agencies, boards, and bureaus under the Committee on Business Professions and Consumer Protection Jurisdiction. Today we will begin our examination on governmental activities to ensure efficiency, transparency, and proper enforcement of the state laws protecting consumers. We're here today to review the Department of Consumer Affairs enforcement activities. DCA issues licenses in more than 100 business and 200 professional categories, including physicians, dentists, contractors, cosmetologists, and automotive repair facilities. DCA includes 40 regulatory entities, which include 9 bureaus, 1 program, 25 boards, 3 committees, 1 commission, and 1 office. You must be a very busy man. Last year, DCA reviewed the existing enforcement processes in their healing arts boards and found systemic problems limiting their ability to investigate and act in a timely manner. In response, DCA has launched the Consumer Protection Enforcement Initiative, and it is designed to overhaul the enforcement process in 3 specific areas, which we'll hear about this morning. I want to thank the director, Brian Stiggers, for joining us this morning to give us an update, and also want to welcome Mr. Bill Young to the committee as well. I want to thank the committee consultants for preparing the hearing today. I want to welcome other committee members to make comments at this time. Mr. Eng?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to, first of all, commend the Chair for her initiatives and her viewing of this issue as an important issue to all of California. As someone who has served on one of the DCA boards before coming up here in my capacity, I believe that Madam Chair has also served on one of the boards, the nursing board, I believe. And I'm not sure if Ms. Ma has served, but certainly has shared the passion. I think that this is an extremely timely convening of this particular subcommittee and of this particular review on oversight and performance. I think that considering the time that we live in terms of the need for the jobs and the focus on that, as well as efficiencies. And I know that having served on the Assembly Business and Professions, we've been concerned many times about scope of practice and wanting to make sure that that's time well spent. And then having served on the board, and I'm sure as the Chair has observed, we've spent a lot of time on issues concerning enforcement, allocation of resources, as well as being concerned about whether or not we're able to have the most efficient use of our time as board members. So I want to welcome this topic, and I think that this will be a legacy for Madam Chair in my time in the legislature, and even observing the legislature when I was serving on the board. I don't recall such a subcommittee ever being convened, nor do I recall having a chair as creative and caring and knowledgeable about the subject from all points of view. So I look forward to this. I unfortunately can't stay for the entire hearing, but I look forward to the product that will come out.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eng. Mr. Ma, would you like to make any opening comments?
Yes, no, thank you. I look forward to this hearing and learning a little bit more about what your agency does. I've been regulated under the California Board of Accountancy for almost 20 years now, so I understand the notices and the processes and the procedures and the enforcement for that agency, but, I didn't realize that you had so many boards and commissions under you, so look forward to hearing your presentation today.
Thank you. Mr. Hill or Ms. Conway, would you like to make any opening comments?
Just to share and echo the comments, it's a privilege to be part of this discussion today and to listen as someone who is also regulated by this Bureau, and it will be interesting to hear some of the comments, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. People have been trying to regulate me my whole life. I don't know how successful they've been. But having served on a board of supervisors, you find that an oversight or a hearing arena can be so productive, so that because you need to have a good understanding of what you're even talking about before you try to go to a committee and then have the audacity to vote. And so I look forward to it. I try every day to. One of my goals is to learn something every day. Of course, I will admit to you at this point in my life, retention is an issue, but I have good notes. So I just look forward to it then. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Conway. With that, welcome. With that, would you like to begin?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Brian Steger. I'm the Director for the Department of Consumer Affairs, and I appreciate the opportunity to appear before this committee this morning to give you a brief overview of the department and address any committee issues or concerns that you may have. We view this oversight hearing as an opportunity for the department to improve the way we deliver services to consumers and licensees. The department's primary mission is to protect and serve the interests of California consumers. Our 37 boards, bureaus, and programs were created by the legislature for the express purpose of protecting the public through regulating over 240 different professions, vocations, and occupations. On a daily basis, the department's 3,000 hardworking, dedicated professionals demonstrate their commitment to fulfilling our consumer protection mandate by providing excellent customer service to consumers, applicants, and licensees. The department's core functions are licensing, enforcement, and consumer education. Effective and efficient licensing protects the public by ensuring the applicant met minimum competency requirements and did not pose an unacceptable risk to the public. Effective and efficient licensing also creates jobs, which is critical for California's economic recovery. Enforcement is another core function of the department. We aggressively investigate alleged violations of the law and take appropriate action when violations are substantiated. These enforcement actions include issuing administrative citations with monetary fines, suspending and revoking licenses, and monitoring licensees that are on probation. We recently launched our Consumer Protection Enforcement Initiative, CPEI, which includes a number of reforms that will significantly speed up enforcement actions to restrict or remove dangerous healthcare practitioners from treating unsuspecting patients. CPEI is a three-pronged approach to reducing the time it takes us to suspend or revoke a license from the current 3 years to an average of 18 months. One component of CPEI is resources. The governor's budget proposes adding an additional 140 positions comprised of investigators and complaint handlers, which will be spread throughout the 18 healing arts boards. The second component of CPEI is administrative improvements, such as providing subpoena power to all executive officers, developing uniform complaint prioritization guidelines, developing and implementing an enforcement academy to train and educate all enforcement staff, establishing a deputy director to monitor all enforcement programs, collaborating with the Attorney General's office to review cases quicker, and the list goes on and on. The third component is pursuing legislative changes to speed up investigations, administrative prosecutions, and the removal of dangerous licensees from practice. Unfortunately, SB 1111, which would have provided these legislative solutions to our healing arts boards, failed in committee. However, we still need those provisions to assist our boards meet their mission. Consumer education is vital to our overall strategy of consumer protection because we believe that prevention is far better than the cure, so we educate consumers about their rights and responsibilities in the marketplace through public awareness campaigns and publishing more than 200 different consumer and licensee publications in various languages. So that's a brief overview of our core functions. And at this time, I wanted to open us up for any questions that you have about licensing, enforcement, or consumer education, and then we'll move on to item 2, if that's okay with Madam Chair.
Thank you. I want to invite Mr. Ruskin to make any opening comments. All the committee members had an opportunity to speak.
Thank you. I'm fine.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions at this time? I think we would like to move on to the next speaker.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members, Bill Young, Consumer Affairs Executive Office. The second component of our discussion revolves around the department's fiscal accountability. And of course, in this day and age, there's no doubt that with the adverse economic condition that California, actually our nation and the global economy are facing, fiscal prudence, fiscal maximization is absolutely a priority. And I know through hearing many of your hearings and subcommittees, this is a mandated requirement and something that we take very seriously. The primary areas that we look at in terms of our fiscal policy is to, again, ensure we have the accountability. We deal with public licensee resources, and it is an foregone conclusion that accounting for those resources, having the transparency, ensuring that when we expend those, it's in the most fiscal prudent manner. Again, some of the members here are due-paying members, and it's important to know that those are being expended in the most efficient way. A fourth component now, though, that we believe as a department we have is to assist the state, assist you in the state's economic development or recovery. And one of those is actually Director Steger and my priority, job creation through our licensing activities. We have approximately 2.4 million licensees and businesses that we regulate. Key. It's absolutely imperative that when we have a license that we process it in the most effective and efficient manner to get that person gainfully employed and, of course, to keep the businesses moving. So we really feel that we have an absolute critical part in ensuring and assisting you, the legislature, in improving California's economy. By way of resources, the department has, for the proposed 10-11 fiscal year, a $504 million operating budget. That is what is being proposed. That is for support of 3,000 positions that actually support the 40 boards and bureaus that we oversee. And I think, as many of you know, the $504 million expenditures are supported by licensing fees paid by the businesses, and the absolute criticality is to make sure that those are expended, again, efficiently. But another key responsibility we have, especially in view of this environment, is to mitigate any fee increases. And I know a lot of times the focus is on the general fund, and certainly that's where it should be. But we, Director Steger, myself, the administration, see the necessity to minimize any increase to the licensees and to the businesses as they try to work through this economy as well. So one of the key ways that we help maintain any limited fee increase but maximize our effectiveness with our resources is really being in a very, it's really a continuous improvement manner with our resources. And by that I mean we essentially use every opportunity to contain costs, and then once we do have an expenditure, make sure that it is only for the necessary services and really prudence, because we know our licensees are facing this economy, and so are the businesses, and we hold ourselves to that same standard. That is absolutely critical, and I know that's what Madam Chair and all you members would expect of us, and that's how our operation runs. Just two quick examples of that cost efficiency that, again, we're very proud of. One is we reported to the Assembly Committee on Accountability and Oversight earlier in the year in February, and one of which was to take a look at a expenditure related to facility costs, facilities that we pay in order to license and hold examination for our licensees, and also to conduct some of the board meetings that we have. Certainly, mandatory costs, critical, but it still was important for us to minimize and make sure that that money was expended as efficiently as possible. And through a variety of approaches, one being simply making sure when we book a room or a facility that we always go to the existing state facilities free or at a very reduced rate, as opposed to going to a private sector area. It seems very simple, but if you build that into there, if you don't have to spend that dollar, it makes it a lot easier. Second was just using technology, video conferencing, audio conferences. We can minimize the number of meetings and cut those costs even further. And through those efforts and one other, whenever we got into a situation where there is not a free facility that we can work, we have a very, very aggressive competitive bid process. So when any of our boards and bureaus are saying, you know, I need to facilitate an examination somewhere and there's not a state facility nearby, it's 3 bid processes, aggressive. Not just any first 3 that come up, but looking for the most maximum cost savings that we can get on those areas. But what's the result? And this is why we were pleased back in February when we spoke to the Accountability Committee that the efforts of the boards and bureaus at Consumer Affairs in the current year is reduced. We've reduced those facility costs by approximately 40%. For us, that means a lot because, again, it mitigates any increases to the licensees and the businesses that are looking to get through this economy. And I'll give you one last example in the budget here. One of the things that we're doing besides maximizing what we have is trying to do with less. And for the budget year, part of our proposals include a consolidation of boards and bureaus, again, without compromising the integrity or the effectiveness, but streamlining. And that process alone is going to save us approximately $5.2 million and 40 positions. So those examples, I think, tell you the fiscal prudence that Director Steger, the administration require of us. We value the dollar, and we make sure our operations are always run in the most cost-effective manner. That concludes my discussion, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions, but I would like to welcome our Vice Chair, Mr. Emerson, if you'd like to make any opening comments, and welcome to Dr. Hernandez, if you'd like to make any opening comments. Everyone had an opportunity to do so.
No, that's fine. Let's just go on with the meeting.
Dr. Stigers, can you talk a little bit more about why some of the average enforcement activities take up to 36 months?
Over the past 18 months, there was a series of articles in the Los Angeles Times and other media that reported that one of our healing arts boards, the Board of Registered Nursing, took an average of 3 years to revoke a license. And those reports were true. When we first came on in the summer, we did an analysis of all of our remaining 17 healing arts boards, and we found that that 3-year average to revoke or suspend a license was not unusual. In fact, most of our programs take about an average 3 years, and that was completely unacceptable to the governor and to the administration. When we went through our analysis to evaluate the process, what we found, one, was that most of our programs did not have enough resources to investigate complaints, which is why we, part of our CPEI was to put forth a budget change proposal, and we were very fortunate to have that proposal submitted into the governor's budget. A second thing was administrative improvements. You know, we found that we haven't taken the time to review our process, do process improvement, work with our managers, you know, hold people accountable, and really to reform these processes and systems that have been in place for 30 years. But we also found that we don't have, that our executive officers don't have the legislative tools and authorities that they need to do their jobs appropriately. So it really was a top-to-bottom review of our enforcement system. And I've been around for about 17 years, and I've managed several different professions and industries, and I was a part of this. And our eyes have been opened, and we realize that we have to make changes now to protect consumers. We are well on our way to doing that. We've already made a lot of improvements. I can tell you that we spend a lot of time talking about accountability with our staff. I've done probably 30 town hall meetings with most of our programs. The word is out, and although what happened in the past is not acceptable, we are well on our way to making improvements.
Thank you. So the governor's budget proposal includes 140 additional
Yes.
enforcement office. Is that what you've stated
Yes.
earlier? Okay, so that's part of the enforcement initiative that
Correct.
you were describing earlier?
Yes.
And so how quickly can that be implemented? It sounds like hiring 140 people at once could be challenging.
It is a challenge, but what we've done, if our proposal, if the governor's budget is approved as it is, we've already positioned the department to bring on people very, very quickly. We have made, if someone would have told me 7 months ago that we would not have been able to bring on that many people in quickly, I would have agreed with that. But we've made massive improvements in our personnel office and in our administrative shop. Almost all of our positions are filled. People have been trained. People are gearing up for this. We've worked with other state agencies to get access to their employment list. We've worked with DPA to get the necessary approvals to hire non-sworn investigators. We've done, and I have been in personnel in one of my past lives, and I can tell you that we've done everything that we can possibly do to position ourselves in a manner that I have the utmost confidence that we'll be able to bring on these 140 positions according to our schedule.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Eng, you had a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, you mentioned, someone mentioned consolidation of boards or bureaus. Where does that appear in your strategic plan, and what is a proposal? I didn't.
We don't have any proposals to consolidate boards in our strategic plan. We have, over the past 2 years, we've gone through 4 consolidations. I can tell you we've worked very closely with those programs. They are moving along as quickly as they can. They've established committees. We're going to those board meetings, and the transition so far is working really well. But we don't have any proposals to consolidate any
Can you
boards.
articulate what the proposal is? For which boards are you consolidating?
We don't have any proposals to consolidate any boards at this point.
Oh, I thought that was just what you said.
Member Ng, with respect to the budget, we do have consolidations, and these are consolidations and showing the fiscal effect of those activities where we have in fact made a combination or streamlining. Examples are structural pest, geology, the naturopathic, osteo, engineers enforcement area, where we've actually had some consolidations. And those proposals that we're showing, for example, in the budget, in the BCPs, are actually showing the net effect of reductions to those funding levels to capture that savings. And I can provide you and the members some detail on what those entail.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Ruskin?
Yeah. Sir, you mentioned that you were aiming to get the process from 3 years down to 18 months. So why 18 months? What is it about? Is it the due process part of it? Is it the time that it takes to investigate? What keeps it at 18 months, or why did you pick 18 months as an optimum process to strive for?
After we did our analysis of the current system, we looked for ways to wherever we could make improvements, and we wanted to be as realistic as possible. I mean, for the most part, it takes about, on average, 6 months to conduct a full investigation of a healthcare practitioner because there's patient records that are involved, people have to be interviewed, there's several things that go in with that. Once we have the report, then we also use an expert witness, a licensee in that area, to provide his or her expert opinion, and then it goes over to the Attorney General's office for the administrative prosecution. This is where due process comes involved. So 18 months really is probably about the best that we can get to make sure that we're affording the licensee with their due process rights and making sure that we do a complete and full investigation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Emerson?
Mr. Seeger, you mentioned 140 new positions.
Yes.
And how are those positions being paid for?
Those are being paid through the special funds of the 18 participating Healing Arts Board. For example, the Nursing Board, which has one of the largest components, has 37 positions, and the remaining boards that participate also have a portion of that 140. And so for those entities, for those discrete entities, the funding sources that are used by those Healing Arts Boards will support those. So there is no commingling of resources, and it's again accountable for the work that is being performed for that board.
So let me ask this question: Are there increases in fees to those boards? Licensure fees increase for these 140 positions?
There are two areas for which there will be a fee increase. But I should say these two areas, one is vocational nurse, psychiatric technician, and as I just mentioned, the Board of Registered Nursing. Those were two areas that were already in the process of having a fee increase. For example, BRN, the nursing, it had been since 1991 or close to 19, 20 years ago that they had their last fee increases. And again, through the ravages of inflation and just the cost of operating, they were already in the process of proposing a fee increase. However, when this proposal for CPI came on board, there was an adjustment made to those rates to ensure that they had the adequate revenue to support those expenditures. So again, of the 18 boards and bureaus, there are two that will need to have an adjustment through their fees in order to facilitate this increased cost.
I have some figures here I just wanted to ask you about. I see under vocational nursing and psychiatric nursing, we have 121,890 licensees, and we have 61 personnel. So that's roughly one individual per 2,000 employees.
Yes.
So what do you think the optimal number is, the ratio of licensees to personnel with the board?
I know you're not going to appreciate this answer because I too sometimes try to get a ballpark of, for example, licensing population and then see what the average staff is to get a ratio. But I've learned over the time on this assignment that that actually is not a good gauge. And I mean that only to say that what really drives the staffing is the workload requirements. And they vary. For example, those that might be required for optometry, those that might be required licensing activities for nurses and physicians, the licensing complexity may be different from that is, for example, for a security guard. And again, no disrespect, it just takes a little difference. So what really drives the staffing is the workload, the empirical data, the time measures, and that's what is used to build the number of staff needed to get the job done.
Well, your department average is one personnel per about 1,500 licensees, or your overall. But I look at the Dental Hygiene Committee. You've got 51,000 licensees and only 3.9, so that's one per 13,000. Is that adequate?
Dr. Emerson, one of the things that we do, and I'm just going to add on to what Mr. Young said about vocational nursing, is that we believe, the department believes that with these added resources in CPEI, that board will be adequately staffed to do the work that it needs to do in a timely manner. With regards to dental hygiene, what we really look for is to have, that executive officer and those committee members, really do an evaluation of their program and make a determination of what their staffing level should be, and then justify those positions through a budget change proposal. It's difficult to, it would be a challenge to have a formula to where you have a staff person per so many licensees, and as Mr. Young said, it really is determined by the workload. Now, at the department, we do have budget folks that are assigned to each and every program. They provide, full level of services. They look at that workload. They work with the executive officer and with the board to make sure that they do have the adequate resources, but that is the responsibility of the program.
So one follow-up question is the 140 positions are being fully paid by licensing fees, and there's no impact on the general fund on these?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I just have one more follow-up question to the Consumer Protection Enforcement Initiative summary that you provided to us. You've indicated that you are seeking several legislative changes in 2010. Can you talk a little bit about you have 4 different areas, including the license fee increase. Can you talk a little bit about each category that you're proposing to change, the statutory changes that you're proposing?
One of the areas, I'm going to ask our director to come up and answer that question, but there are some changes that are put forth administratively. For example, we want to provide our executive officers with the opportunity to hire non-sworn investigators to give some flexibility in how we handle cases. But this is Luis Portillo, our ledge director.
The bill, Senate Bill 1111, it covered a variety of different areas, and it really touched based on 2 key areas that the department wanted to improve. One was areas related to the timeline, as how we speed up investigations, how long it takes to take action on licensees. The second was specifically related to a variety of areas we thought would help improve consumer protection, both at the board level as well as the information that the consumer receives. And so to the extent that we had, it's a pretty extensive bill that kept changing significantly. I don't know if there's specific questions about it.
Okay, well, one of the things that you're proposing is to tie the maximum license fee amounts to the consumer price index to keep up with inflation. Mm-hmm. So how many boards are affected, and do you have an actual number of dollar figures or boards that will be affected by this proposal?
Initially, that had been part of our initial proposal to allow boards to keep that so that their fees can maintain with just simply cost of living. Before the bill was introduced, however, that provision was removed from the bill.
Oh, so I see. So all the legislative changes were put into one bill?
Yes. So it was all one bill. And then from what got introduced to what's actually the final version that was acted on by the committee, there was a significant amount of changes going back and forth to address some of the stakeholder concerns.
So will you be proposing to increase the licensing fees sometime this year?
I think our last discussion, there isn't any. We're not planning on moving forward the proposal to tie the maximum fees to CPI. That's not something we're going to move forward with. However, as Mr. Young mentioned, there are some boards that are moving forward with fee increases as allowed to them. If they haven't reached their statutory maximum, they are moving forward with some of those.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, those provisions only apply to the 18 healing arts boards, not the entire department.
Okay. And so the other 3 areas that you have proposed here under statutory changes, will you be seeking to make these changes sometime this year? Or?
Yeah, I think the process, the point we're at right now is we're going to be looking to see, we've done an internal review of the bill itself and kind of see what are those things that are in the bill can we just do through regulations, or sometimes boards may just have the statutory ability to already do so. I think what you saw as part of the legislation was an effort by the department to really standardize a lot of the enforcement process and a lot of the practices that work really well on some boards to try to extend those out to all the boards. I would say a vast majority of the parts of the SB 1111 were authorities that exist typically for one or two boards, and we wanted to extend that out. What we've gone through is doing our review, is seeing what areas we can do through existing just authorities, and we're going to be moving forward with that. Additionally, there are some parts of the bill that are necessary for the BCP that's in the budget with regards to making sure that medical board, dental board can hire non-sworn investigators. So those to look to those specific portions that are related to the BCP will be going in budget trailer bill language. And then I think our intent is to continue working with stakeholders, working with the legislature to continue moving the other parts that are critical of the bill to try to continue to get some of that done this year. I think that's our intent right now.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Neela, welcome. Everyone had an opportunity to comment. Would you like to?
I will relieve everybody with not taking advantage of your kind invitation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from committee members? Mr. Emerson?
I'd like to address the issue of SB 1111. The status of that bill is dead, right? So are you looking to reintroduce portions of that bill this year? Are we going to see it in some other form?
It is a possibility. We're looking at all of our options right now. As Mr. Portillo said, some of the things that are in that bill, we are asking our healing arts boards to move forward with the regulations if they can do it that way. But again, in order for us to reduce that 3-year time period down to under 18 months, we're going to need some legislative help on this, and we're hoping that we can work with the legislature to make sure that happens.
So let me ask the question this way. Are you looking to put it in any kind of budget language? Or will it be a standalone bill?
Some of the provisions are going to be in the trailer bill language. I think there's 3 provisions. I'll let Mr.
Yeah, from discussions that have been taking place, there's about 2 provisions that are going to be going in the budget trailer bill language that are in SB 1111, and those specifically relate to the budget change proposal that's in the budget. And I'll walk you through what those 2 are. Actually, it's just really one provision. It would allow for the medical board as well as dental board as well as the department's division of investigations to hire non-sworn investigators. Right now, as part of the 440 positions Director Steger mentioned, we have a number of those are going to medical board, I believe dental board as well. The statute, the way it's currently written for those 3 groups I mentioned, says that they can hire sworn investigators. So it's arguable whether they have the ability or not to hire non-sworn investigators. So if we're going to authorize those positions, that statutory language is needed in order for them to be able to bring those positions on. And that is the only, and I think with one minor thing that was not in SB 1111, those are the only really 2 things that are going to be in the budget trailer bill language. Anything that was policy related that was as part of SB 1111 will not be in the trailer bill.
When was SB 1111 introduced?
Back in February, I don't recall off the top of my head, but I would say early February, somewhere in there.
This year?
This year, yes.
And it was heard?
It was heard in the Senate Business and Professions Committee. It failed passage, but again, we're working with the author to looking for ways to continue to address some of those things, whether through internally, as well as we may be looking for other vehicles to be able to move those. However, any other vehicle that we would use would still go through the full legislative review. I mean, it would have to go through Assembly, BNP, the full Assembly, as well as the Senate Business and Professions Committee in the full floor as well.
So we will not see consolidation of boards coming up this year?
The SB 1111 did not address consolidation of boards, and I don't expect that.
I understand it did not, but I'm asking the question, are we going to see any consolidation of boards coming up this year?
There are no plans that I know of right now to consolidate any boards under DCA that I know of right now.
So as soon as you know, you'll be letting us know,
Yes,
I presume. All
absolutely.
right, thank you very much.
Dr. Emerson, if I may, with Senate Bill 1111, when we work with the author to get this bill, many folks were telling us that this was probably the most important legislation the department had sponsored in over 30 years. And one of the things that we did is we worked very closely with stakeholders, and we probably had I think it was 25 or 27 meetings with associations and interest groups to really try to work to resolve all of the differences, and we got a lot of praise for that. And so I just want to assure this committee that we do reach out to our stakeholders and to licensees and our associations to make sure that we're putting forth the best possible policy.
I appreciate that comment. What I'm fascinated by is my understanding is that you only had one yes vote on that particular bill.
That's true.
So I don't understand how the stakeholder process worked, because obviously there was not a lot of interest in what you're trying to do with that bill.
I think that the legislature has a tremendous interest in consumer protection.
I understand that.
So I think that I can't tell you why it happened the way that it did. I can tell you that the department did and the author's office did a lot of work to get this thing moved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from committee members? Hearing none, I would like to thank all of you for joining us today and offer you an opportunity to provide any closing comments.
We would just say that consumer protection, again, is the highest priority for the department. We're going to continue to work very closely with all of our boards to establish accountability and transparency and to improve board governance. We have a very active executive office, and we avail ourselves of each of the board's bureaus and programs. And I can tell you from each one of our 3,000 employees that everybody understands what the priority is, and we're going to work hard to fix this system of enforcement. And we're looking forward to working with the legislature to meet your needs.
Great, thank you. And we look forward to inviting you back and giving us an update on the enforcement initiative and all the other great things that you're doing at the department. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, members.